Hello, my name is Debbie Watts. Thank you for joining my YouTube channel.
Every single day, I'm gonna make something great. That's my way.
Before we start making the card, I'm just going to run through the materials you'll need. So today I'm using Cardio Collection and I'm going to be starting with the Branching Out stamp set. We'll also be using their Winter Stroll stamp set. I've got a selection of different tones on the Distress Oxide, Antique Linen, Tea Dye and Vintage Photo. I'm using a really soft blending brush today to blend the Distress Oxides. If you're wondering about the strange noises in the background, that's going to be my yellow-crowned Amazon parrot. So today we are using a couple of sizes of clear acrylic blocks for the stamps. I've got a bigger one for the sentiment. To create some fluffy snow effect, I'm using Woodware, simply called White Fluffy Stuff, and you get this to puff up by using a heat gun. To add some frosty sparkle to the snow, we will be using Cosmic Shimmer glitter jewels, and I've chosen iced snow. You'll need some clear drying glue to fix the jewels to your card. Let's walk through your cardstock. You'll need a 15 by 15 centimetre 300 GSM folded base scorecard. You'll need to mat and layer with some either mirror card or coloured cardstock, and that's 14.2 by 14.2. And then you will need some 300 GSM white cardstock. I've cut this about 13.5 by 13.5. Using the same contrast, create some strips, using of course the same diameters, but the contrast card needs to be 6 centimetres and the white card needs to be 5.5. This creates a lovely frame around each layer as you place it then onto your base card. Don't affix at the moment, we'll start doing that later. You'll also need some double-sided tapes. I've got the white tissue tape and the red ultra clear. To keep your hands dry and your surfaces, just have a cloth at hand and a wet tissue. We'll be using a black ink pad today to stamp the Wellington boots and the sentiment. Let's start making that card. Take your white cardstock and overlay the smaller piece centrally onto your square white. Now, what we're going to do in the top right hand corner and bottom left hand corner is to create some branches, and we want them to continue flowing. But before we do that, we are just going to take the larger square white card and using tea dye, we will distress very, very lightly all 4 edges. You don't want the ink to be heavy or prominent, so just do a soft blend on this one. Repeat this process on the smaller white cardstock too. Along the bottom edge of your smaller white cardstock, we are just going to build up that colour. So continue using the Tea Dye Distress Oxide and just draw that colour up the card slightly. When you're happy with that coverage, clean the brush, change your ink pad, we're moving on to Antique Linen, and draw up that colour slightly further up the card. ink pads away, make sure the lids are on, and just clean the surface. You don't want to start contaminating your cardstock at this stage. First of all, using the branching out stamp set, choose 2 of the images. Take your stamps off of their holder and affix them to your acrylic blocks. It's quite important that you match your stamp size to your block and without any overlay, and this just enables you to get greater control whilst you're stamping. We'll be using the Distress Oxide ink pads today to stamp the branches. I'm going to use a combination of colours here as opposed to just one single tone. So we've got Vintage Photo, possibly Antique Linen, but definitely tea dye. So decide where you actually want your branches to be and load up whichever you want your prominent branch with the darkest colour. What I mean by the prominent is I'm going to be using the bolder of the stamp ranges from this stamp set. So as I say, we're going to be adding the detail to the corners. So make sure you've got good coverage. Because the the acrylic block is small, I can actually take the stamp to the ink pad. You may actually want to take the ink pad to the stamp. It's personal choice. I do tend to mix my styles depending on the size of the stamp itself. So just add the detail to the top corners. Using the same stamp and Vintage Photo, just add some small detail to the bottom edge of your card. If you keep your stamps clean as you go, you're less likely to contaminate the different colours. With a different stamp from your set, I'm going to use tea dye and overstamp the detail that we've just done with the Vintage Photo. This will actually start to create some depth to your stamping with the darker and the lighter tones. When you are stamping, you don't need to be heavy-handed. Just make sure you have enough ink onto your stamp and you put some even pressure when stamping. I'll bring my work close up to the camera so hopefully you can actually start to see the depth I was talking about with the different ink tones. I'll just adjust the light, hopefully the camera will pick that up now. Don't forget, between stamping and different pieces of cardstock, take the wet tissue, clear any ink on your work area and gently dry it. So exactly the same process that you did with the smaller card, we're going to repeat with the larger squared. What we want to do is try to blend in the corners together so they appear as one. So start with your Vintage Photo and your more prominent, bolder stamp and repeat that process. To keep a check on your layout, take your smaller cardstock back to your large square and just overlay so you can actually see what I was talking about. The image of the larger square is starting to blend in with your smaller cardstock. Repeat the same on the other opposite corner. Once you're happy with that, take your different stamp and the tea dye and again over stamp those corners as you did with the smaller piece. I'm happy with that coverage now. I'll just bring my work closer to the camera again so that you can see the depth and the two-tone of your inks. Overlay, and as you can see, it's really looks as one. This doesn't have to be perfect. Just as a reminder, as I always do, keep your stamps clean and place them back onto your stamp holder that comes with the packaging. Remember to store these away from light and heat. Moving on to the Cardio Winter Stroll stamp set, decide which Wellington boots that you want and affix these to appropriate sized acrylic blocks. This is really great if you have multiple blocks because you can bulk stamp and make batches of these all in one session without needing to change the blocks. So the ink we're going to be using is a pigment black ink. I've got VersaFine Clair. And make sure, because this is a solid image, that you've really got a solid covering of ink onto your stamp. Just make sure your fingers are clear and the block is clear of any ink smudges. You don't want to transfer this to your work at this stage. Position the stamp and put some light, even pressure, and make sure that you've got the full stamp image. Using the black ink here really makes the image pop against the subtle browns that we're using for this card. With the other Wellington stamps, repeat that process again. Just make sure you've got a good cover of black ink on your stamp. I'll bring the work closer to the camera so you can take a good look. In this stamp set there are some smaller stamps which are like blades of grass. So what I want to do is around the Wellington boots is just stamp a few times, and I think this just gives it some really fun detail. We have finished stamping for now. What I want to do is really lock in those colours to stop any smudging. When you're using solid stamps, the ink can remain quite wet. So taking both pieces, just hold the heat gun over your ink stock and just make sure the ink's dry. This is a really fun part. The white fluffy stuff, sometimes it gets blocked, so have a pin handy. Underneath the Wellington boots, we just want to add some of the detail, and this, once it's puffed up, will create the snow. You don't need a lot, so just put it in patches to create some detail. Don't forget on the top to just add some small details of snow too. So you can see I put it underneath the boots and around the boots and just on the top of the Wellingtons. Continuing with the fun, take your heat gun and start to dry out that wet white liquid. Just mind your fingers, as obviously the heat gun gets quite warm. As you apply the heat, you can hopefully on the camera see it start to puff up, and I think this is one of the best products I've come across to create the realistic snow effect. let's add some frost and sparkle. So place a A4 capture sheet and take your clear drying craft glue and add just scatter detail with the glue over the area sheet that you've stamped in the corners along the bottom. And take the glitter jewels, sprinkle lightly on so you're covering the glue, and then what I do is I tap that off onto the A4 sheet and then I press down into the surplus jewels and pick up those jewels on the glue that's on the card. Hopefully you can actually see them start to sparkle in the camera. Repeat this same process in the corners of your larger square cardstock. Tap off these surplus jewels to your capture stock and scoop these up and place them back in your container. Nothing ever goes to waste. Take your small piece of card and overlay over the square, and you can now actually see how those corners blend up together. We're going to be stamping a sentiment at the bottom. Using the VersaFine Clair and a acrylic block with your sentiment affixed, load up your stamp. Just make sure you've got a good coverage. We decided previously where we wanted the sentiment, so just align it and place on your card, and just once again light even pressure. Once again, lid on your ink pad and just wipe your fingers. Before constructing the card matter and layering, I'm just going to heat set everything just to make sure that glue is completely dry. Taking your layers and your artwork, place the white tissue tape on the back of the square on all 4 edges. Align it to your coloured stock layer and you should have a nice frame with even edges all round. Do the same with a smaller piece. Peel off the backing paper and affix to your coloured cardstock. I want to fix my work to the base card now, and I'm going to use the red tape because I think it just has a better adhesion. So again, make sure your card opens the right way, peel off the backing and affix your square to your base card. Remember the sizes you've cut and you should have a nice even frame all round. I always turn over the card to press into place so I don't disturb the image. Take your smaller piece, again repeat this process and lay this centre to your card. Once in position, flip it over and again press firmly into place. I really enjoyed making this card. I've made it in some other colours and used some of the other stamps from the branching out. So you can see, you know, it's very, very easy to create batch cards and in no time at all. Well, wasn't that fun? We had some great designs there, different colours, just changing the look of the card. So thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I hope to see you again soon. So from me to you, happy crafting.